Okay, and welcome to the MimeCast. And this week we have the inevitable Ed Holmes. Ooh, there he
Unavoidable,
is.
too.
How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing well, Michael, under the circumstances as well as can be expected.
Yeah, really. It's like some people are starting to go a little nuts, and some people are just going a little more nuts than they were before.
I'm noticing, yes.
So anyway,
yes,
this is a chance for people to get to know Mime Troopers a little better than just seeing them on the stage or knowing that they're in the office. So let's start at the beginning with the Ed Holmes story. Where were you born?
Yeah.
Where were you born?
I was born in East Cleveland, Ohio, May 24th, 1945. And Bob and Jesse, and grew up in East Cleveland, bopped around, had a little bit on the edge of the Cleveland, out in the country, had a little bit back into town. The usual high school, I was kind of a class clown and a lousy student. I didn't have any college plans. I couldn't afford it. Parents were quite working class, and I didn't have the grades. I almost got a scholarship at Ohio State for a diver. I was a diver on the swim team at high school, but missed out to something.
Wait a minute, your high school had a swim team?
Hell yeah!
And a diver?
We had
like a high dive?
Board. Yes, 3 meter board, couple of 1 meter boards, and I was a diver on the swim team. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I remember when we go on the road, you would always be diving off the rocks into the Yuba River.
Oh,
I
yeah.
did not know that. But I want to go back a little bit. So
Sure.
Between you being born and being in high school, so were your parents from Cleveland, or had they moved there?
No, they're from Cleveland, and Dad had been in World War II and the infantry in the Big Red One, the First Division, had fought in North Africa against Rommel, and had landed in Sicily, and that he had collected enough wounds in North Africa and Sicily that he was excused from his outfit, which was headed for D-Day, for Normandy. And was going to land on, Utah Beach? I always get a mix up, Utah or Omaha. And his unit was kind of like decimated. So if he wouldn't have gotten a pass because of his wounds, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
I didn't even know they did that. So it's just a count of wounds. It's not. I always thought you had to have a major wound.
He had enough of them. He had like 3 wounds in the space of his 2 years in the infantry. So lucky enough. So then he gets out, comes home, gets married, has a kid, and they grew up. And he gets a job at the Cleveland Electric power plant, big coal-fired power plant on the shores of Lake. Because my grandfather, who had immigrated from Poland when he was like 8 years old. He comes over to America, comes to Cleveland, is working miscellaneous jobs. He gets a job there, so it's kind of a very despotic chain of events. So my dad, and then this figures in later in our story. So he was like an operating engineer at a power plant, and Mom was a housewife, and they were beautiful roller skaters together.
Really?
I remember going to a roller rink, and they would flow around the floor and dance, and the music, the guy playing that organ thing and roller skating music. And I remember, and I was just a little speedball going as fast as I could around, but they would be in the center doing these beautiful. It was probably the happiest I ever saw them together. So
was that how they met, or did they just get into that? They realized they were both into it.
I think they did meet at a roller rink. Yeah, when my dad got out, he came back, and then that's roller rink parents. So so I grew up, bounced around different places in Cleveland, East Cleveland. Was a jock in high school, played football and baseball, and I was a diver on the team, and like a C+ student. And a wise ass. So I was getting in trouble once in a while, for talking back. Had that reputation. So I get out, graduate in 1963, worked some crappy jobs for a year. UARCO business forms. I was like an office boy and mail delivery boy.
Were you still living at home?
Yeah, still living at home. But then I moved in with a buddy. So I met my Barb, who's my first wife, and at a swimming pool there. And I was hanging around with her and then her brother, and we kind of got a place on the west side of Cleveland. And then I got fired from the UARCO job, and then I got a job at Republic Steel, working in the steel mills, open hearth steel mills, which was a trip because, like, what's the opening scene? Deer Hunter. In Deer Hunter, they had a steel mill opening scene. There's another movie, Richard Gere, steel mill scene. It was a Terrence Malick film.
I can't remember.
Out in the prairies.
Yeah.
Sam Shepard, I think there's also an opening scene there of the open hearth furnaces, and they're just surreal. Giant machines and sparks flying everywhere, and flames leaping around. And so I was working there. I got
what were you doing? What was your job at the open hearth?
I was called a slagger. A slagger. So every oven, these had these giant ovens, old ancient brick ovens, cooking steel up, and they had these machines that would run in, and the doors would open up, and they dump different chemicals or a geology in there, and then they mix it up with the iron, and then scrap iron, and then we were some guys they'd dump a pile of some sort of additive, and then we'd have to take a shovel, go up, and the door would open up, flames, and we'd have to go up to that door and throw the shovel full of stuff in there, and your eyebrows would singe off, and you're wearing giant things. It was mad, just mad. I mean, then guys were dying. Some guy fell off the back end of the thing into a giant puddle of slag. So I get elevated to a job that this is a death job. So I quit there and had a buddy out of high school that says, come on down to Ford Motor. And so I went down to Ford Motor in Cleveland and was on the engine assembly line for about 3 months. It was going nuts. And that was my future. I was going to be, and then of course, then I'm getting closer and closer with my first wife. And we're kind of like, so I'm going to, that was my future. I was going to be a factory worker. I was going to get her pregnant, and that was going to be it.
Right.
Fortunately.
Cleveland forever.
Yeah. Fortunately, I got drafted. 1864.
Hey, that worked out.
It turned out to be a good thing. So I get drafted. I go, and my dad goes, "Oh, you ain't gonna go." I said, "You're not going to the Army." And I had always been, as I was growing up, in love with the sea, the romance of the sea. I mean, when Moby Dick came out, I think it was in '58 or something. I saw the movie like 5 times in a row. I read Moby Dick when I was 10 years old. I knew all the history of sailing vessels. I could name every sail on a clipper ship. I was drawing them. I knew whaling. So I was deep into maritime history. And so it was kind of like, I want to join the Navy. I'm going to go join the Navy. I'm going to go see the world, and I'm going to learn a job. So, but you have to join. So it's either 2 years. Well, this is '64. So Vietnam was not cooking then. It was still a police, not a police action, advisory action. Right. Yeah. So there wasn't a big thing to worry about. But I went, no, I'm not going to be in the Army. I want to do that sailor thing. So join the Navy for 4 years. The minimum was 4. So I go down there to the recruiting station, and a guy goes, "Okay, so here's a recruiter." Now the recruiters, they're like used car salesmen, fundamentalist preachers, all smiles, hey, come on in, hey, yeah, hey, what can the Navy do for you? I says, well, I want to learn a trade. He says, okay, good. Well, here's the book of jobs. Take this home. Come back next week, and you tell me exactly what it is you want to do and get out of the Navy. Okay, fine, good. So I go back and I'm leafing through the book, and I had no inclinations or tendencies or talents. I had some basic mechanical ability, because my dad was basically a mechanic. So I'm looking at the book and I don't know why, but my choice was meteorologist.
Really?
Yes. It's like it's outdoors. Sure. Yeah. It could be adventurous.
Yeah.
So I go back to the recruiter, in downtown Cleveland. I go, I want to be a meteorologist. And he goes, yeah, sure, no problem. Sign here.
Oh,
So you
God.
sign there, come back next week, get on the bus, go to Waukegan, Illinois, just north of Chicago for basic training for 2 months. And you take all kinds of tests and they try to brainwash you and they do a pretty good job of it. And then you take these aptitude tests, and then you come back at the end of and so you're just about ready to get out of boot camp and go on to whatever training for your job. And I go into that guy, and he goes, and so now they got they got me hooked. I'm in for 4. So the counselor goes, yeah, well, we ain't taking any meteorologists right now. What? But I signed up for. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, we're not taking any. Sorry. So
ask again next year.
Yeah. But but looking at your aptitude test, you could be, one of these mechanical things. There's machinist mate and there's boiler technician. It's all these heavy duty engine room things.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh, okay, fine. Yeah. I says, okay. I guess I could do that. Yeah. Okay. And he goes, now, son, he called me son. I don't just say this to anybody, but, it says, you could qualify for nuclear power school. Ooh, this is the wave of the future. Now, back then, they're showing the little stupid things in class. They're friendly atom. This is going to be the wave of the future. I'm going, wow, that's kind of interesting because, my grandfather and my dad work in coal-fired energy plants. I could be the next generation. Perfect. And he goes, yeah, that sounds good. And he says, but here comes the but. It's always a big but.
It's always a big but.
Always a big but in there. And he goes, to get this training, you got to do 2 extra years of training. It's very intense engineering training. And so you got to sign up for 2 more years.
3 years.
So the hitched a pause in my, giddy up there. And I went, 4 years to 6 years. But, this is an opportunity here, ground floor, and or I'm not sure I'm saying that to myself or the guy saying it to me.
Yeah,
you're going to get some training that's going to get you in position if you get out. If you don't decide not to stay in the Navy, you're going to get a job in the nuclear power field, which is just growing in leaps and bounds. This is good. So I went, yeah, okay, fine, sure, okay. So I had signed the paper for machinist mate school, which is basically a steam mechanic, valve twister. Signed the papers for 2 years of nuclear power training. And then he goes, now, would you like to volunteer for submarines? Hell yeah. Yeah. I grew up watching Victory at Sea, and, I grew up every submarine movie. So adventure? Yeah. Danger?
Yeah. It's just getting cooler and cooler and cooler for you.
Yes. Extra pay? Oh, yeah. Esprit de corps?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a space of, like 3 minutes, I signed 3 signatures and destined me to. So off I go. I go to machinist mate school, still there in Waukegan for 2 months, and I learn how to twist valves. Then I get out of that and go to submarine school in New London. You do 2 months of submarine, and they have to screen you. You have to do all kinds of tests. Pressure tests, your ears.
Right. Just so you're not going to
and psychological tests, and you're weeding people out. If you don't, you got to have some weeding people out. You got to be too nuts or not nuts enough. I'm not sure which way the weeding went.
Yeah, it's like, what's the is it like? Because it's so hard to be in a submarine. You're going to be down there with people. They don't want you to go nuts. While you're in a tin can hundreds of feet down.
And so a lot of the psychological tests were putting you under some stressful conditions, and just, these old salts are just watching you, seeing how you're handling them and seeing how you're handling them with your crewmates. So we went through a lot of tests, and there's guys, and then, so the last thing at this 2 months training at submarine school, New London, Connecticut, was to go out on a real submarine. They had this old diesel boat sitting down at the pier, and we march us down there, and there's these old salts kind of, doing these really, they're called milk runs, take out the young, the boots, And so you go down inside this old submarine, and it's an old diesel boat, and it stinks like diesel, and, and mold. And then they take it out the river and they go out and they cross the bar into deep water and they, then the alarm comes on, goes dive, dive, and the engine shut down and then you hear all these hydraulics going and air compression. And the boat motion is going like this on the ocean. And then all of a sudden it goes, ooh, it's gliding underwater. Now, some guys, these students who had passed every test with flying colors, psychological, all the engineering tests, all the everything, scholastic tests, the interviews and everything, when they felt that boat go under, they had a change of mind. They felt,
Really?
yes.
Wow.
And it didn't happen in our class, but the story was other classes, guys would, their eyes would kind of go kind of wide. And the old salts are down there talking to us. Hey, where are you from? Blah, blah, kind of keeping an eye on us. They would hit a button and the submarine would surface and there'd be a boat out there and they'd take the guy off and he'd thank them. Thanks for trying, and then they'd send him off to the surface fleet. Well,
that is so weird because it seems like it's great. It's really interesting that they've got like you're saying, the old salts who are just there, just looking at you, just like, how you doing, what's going on, and having to have conversations with you. But it would seem to me like you're already in the submarine, and that it goes down would just be it going down. Nothing would change except for, I guess, pressure.
Yeah, well, a little bit of pressure change. Yeah, the ears would change, but you'd feel suddenly the depth of the ocean underneath you. It's like you're on the surface and you're on the surface. There's air, but now you feel yourself underwater and there's nothing underneath you except, 10,000 foot of water. And so, some guys had it. So I didn't, I made it out. So I get out. Now I go to my nuclear training, 6 months at Bainbridge, Maryland for 6 months of academics. And so you studied heat transfer and fluid flow, metallurgy, algebra, major math things. Physics, nuclear physics. You're getting a cram course in nuclear engineering in 6 months to get your basics, and it's tough. And there's tests, and there's more tests, and so I'm working there. I'm working through it. I can focus a little bit enough to get my grades where I wouldn't get kicked out. Other guys are getting kicked out, and even though they had signed up for 6 years for nuclear training, if they flunk, they still got 6 years to do in the Navy.
Oh, that's the trick.
Yeah.
Oh, I had one question. So were you married yet?
No, not yet.
Nope. Okay. Not yet. Was this like the furthest you'd ever been away from home?
Yeah.
Connecticut?
As a kid, my dad would take me to Niagara Falls, from Cleveland. That was our big trips. Once out of high school, I drove to Washington, D.C. to visit a buddy who was in the Air Force station there, and that was my long trip. But so I get through Bainbridge, Maryland, and then the next thing is 6 months of prototype, which is an actual steam generating nuclear power plant. And there's several of them around the country for training purposes. And this one was up in West Milton, New York, right near Saratoga Springs, upper state New York. Saratoga Springs, Skidmore College. So I get sent there for 6 months of training, and we're living in a house in Skidmore and then commuting half an hour out of town to this nuclear power plant where now it's hands-on, turning valves and taking gauges and going through procedures and emergency procedures. And the heat's on now, so to speak, because this is where you get to qualify to go to a nuclear power plant on either a surface or a submarine vessel. So guys it's tough. It's really Admiral Rickover, the father of the nuclear Navy, was like a benevolent dictator about this whole thing. And the reason nuclear power has a good reputation, good in the Navy, didn't have any really serious troubles. It's because of Rickover demanding the utmost. I mean, really a stickler for detail. So you go through this training thing, and I wound up sleeping out there at West Milton, not coming home because I had to stay and study and get ready. So you get through that, and I get out. And so now, okay, I passed. A bunch of friends didn't. I think it was like about a 40% fail rate.
Wow.
Guys get kicked out. They just can't measure up.
You're like a year and a half now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So a year and a half, I haven't touched a boat yet. I mean, that one little submarine ride out of New
Right.
London.
Wow.
So I get out, and now I'm designated for submarine service because I had volunteered for it. I had done the 2-month training, and but in 1963, a year before I went in, the Thresher, USS Thresher,
Mhm.
went down and didn't come back up on a training mission off the East Coast. And they were still looking, trying to pick up the parts from a mile or two below the surface and put it back together again and try to
And
figure
was
out.
the Thresher was a nuclear boat?
Yeah, nuclear boat, fast attack nuclear boat, and it was like the first one of its a class. So it's a new
Oh,
class.
really? Oh, wow.
So that goes down, and so now they stopped building the boats, all the shipyard stuff, because they wanted to find out, well, what the heck happened. So they're trying to put this puzzle together of the Thresher so that they can not do, that doesn't happen again. So we get orders. There's our class. Well, there's no submarines available right now because we're not building them. So we're gonna send you to a surface boat, a surface nuclear boat. There's a couple of cruisers they had. But kind of went, oh, we're getting gypped. We wanted to go to submarines. We wanted esprit de corps, man. We wanted extra pay. Well, no, you can't. There's a guy in a class had a dad who had a number of somebody who called it up. We had those orders changed. There's about 6 of us in that class,
Really?
designated subs, headed for surface. All of a sudden, they withdrew that and they sent us to wait for a nuclear billet, they called it, a nuclear job to open up on a submarine. They sent us to old diesel boats. They only had about a dozen left. This is 1966.
These are old World War II boats.
Yeah, these are old World War II boats. So they still had a few of them running around. So they sent us to there. So I get sent to Pearl Harbor to the USS Tyru, SS 416. And so diesel boats were another Navy. They were like the Hell's Angels of the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
These guys were crusty. These guys were, because the duty was what they call arduous plus, because it was cramped, smelly, just difficult duty.
What's
And
the
so
size difference between like a nuclear boat that you were going to go to? Because you're saying this was more cramped than a nuclear.
This is like a crew of 70, and a nuke boat's a crew of 110.
Oh,
100.
wow.
And then also it's just old machinery.
Yeah.
I mean, duct tape and baling wire. I mean, they're just holding these boats together with, a high level of jury rigging and craft. But these boats are still useful. And they have a purpose in the Navy that the nuke boats couldn't do, because an old diesel boat could get in close to shore in shallow water, and a nuke boat can't, which figures later in the story. So we report aboard. There's 2 of us. There's 2 or 3 on a Tyru, and these old salts, bearded, the only branch of the surface at that time that you can grow a beard, because water was not plentiful on the boat.
Oh, right.
You had diesel boat did not make its own. You could make a little water, but not enough to take a shower, not enough to shave, just enough for the coffee pot and to top off the batteries. So pretty crusty guys, and they look down. These assholes, nukes. Oh, they roll their eyes. Oh, good. So I'm in the engine room, and diesels. I'm working on diesels now. Hey, man.
No. Did you have to get retrained for diesel?
No. It's on the job training. You're standing watch with the guys who are, who have been there a while. And I was lucky. The guy I stood watch with, Antonio, a Filipino guy, was wonderful. He showed me the ropes and how to do things and what to look out for. So we take this. So I thought, well, I'm going to be here a few months. No, it took a year. I was on this boat for a year. And we go and head for a Westpac cruise, the Western Pacific cruise. We'd leave Pearl, and we're going to go to Brisbane, Australia first for a little R&R, or as I like to call it, I&I, intoxication and intercourse. And then we're going to go and do these patrols over in, the West Pacific, which included Vietnam. And so we're on the boat, and we're doing training. It's constant. You have to get qualified on a boat. The little dolphins that submarine sailors wear on the chest. You got to earn those dolphins. The first time you're on a boat, you have to qualify, which means you have to know every switch, valve, pipe, procedure, everything in every compartment. You have to know everybody's job. And until you're
Wow.
until you're qualified, you're a non-qual puke. You're a hazard because the submarines, if whatever compartment you're in, something goes wrong, that electrical box starts sparking. There's spray coming out of that thing. You got to know what to turn, and
Right.
how to save the whole crew. So you're constantly being trained in that. You're constantly tracing out, lines. You're in the bilge, tracing out the lines and finding out you're constantly having, fire at sea drills, rappel borders, just constant collision alarms. So it's tough. It's rough. It's challenging, and it was being in the Navy. It was really being a sailor because these diesel boats, when they went somewhere, they traveled on the surface. Nuke boat would go out, clear the bar, and go underwater, and wouldn't have to come back up for 2 months or 3 months.
Oh God.
They were underwater without a sight of, only guys that saw anything were the guys looking through the periscope.
Right.
Diesel had to run on the surface to make any way, make some miles. And then we dive to get so we're doing these divings and surfacing, but we're running on the surface. And I'm standing watching the engine room, which is hot, loud, smelly, boring as fuck. Just
Oh God.
But we were kind of extra, so we would get to shift up to the control room, and sometimes we'd be on the helm. Sometimes when we're underwater, we'd be on the diving planes. We're on the surface, we'd be up in the sail as lookouts. So I'm up in the sail as lookouts enough times to get a sense of the ocean. I mean, that romance of the sea was like, I'm seeing dolphins playing on the bow wave. I'm seeing, storms at sea, and the sea like glass. I'm seeing, having a real experience of the sea. We stop at the equator. We do the ritual on the equator where you have to meet Neptune's court, and be a.
Could you describe that for people who don't know?
Okay, so if you haven't crossed the equator, you're a polywog, all right? And if you have crossed the equator, you're a shellback. So this ritual dates back to, day zero, the first boat, across the equator, thousands of years ago. And so you stop on the equator, the captain, and so like out of a crew of we had 70 guys on board, there were probably half of them were shellbacks and half of them were polywogs. Now, we knew as polywogs that what was going to happen. We're going to have to do these kind of messy rituals, but also that we would get all our hair cut, shaved. And we didn't want to do that because we're going to Brisbane, Australia, and the girls like Americans there. So some wise guy, found out where the shaving clippers were, the hair cutting clippers, and stole them. So we're kind of being kind of cocky, going, yeah, they ain't going to take our hair. So stop at the equator. Captain comes over the 1MC.
Now all polywogs lay to the forward torpedo room. Uniform of the day, skivvies on backwards.
Okay, conjure that. So here we are, bottom of the ladder, going as we come up to the hatch, coming up to the deck. There's a chief of the boat on the old cell phone, and he's kind of smiling at us, and he's got a big pair of wire snips.
Oh God.
And so he takes a dig out of one side of your head, takes a dig out of the other, and just turns your head into this ugly looking, okay, score one for those guys. And then there's
really. That's when you find the clippers. You go, oh, these.
Here it is.
That's what you're looking for. Oh.
Sorry. So then there's the Royal Court, which consists of the Royal Baby, which was this torpedoman, and what the shellbacks have been doing for like 2 weeks before we reach the equator is saving buckets full of the swill from the galley. That that stew that didn't go over too well, they kind of put that pudding, that maybe whatever, you just start collecting the stuff in buckets. Yeah. And so you climb up, and now you go through the court, and so there's the royal baby, and you got to kiss the royal baby's belly. Now it's a torpedo man, and he had this big belly, and on the big belly, right around his, he had a lot of tattoos, but the one I remember most was the one around his belly button was a little bunny rabbit, cartoon bunny rabbit, looking over its shoulder, so its tail was right above. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Get the picture. So you kind of go, I had to kiss that. So you're trying to go, well, maybe I'll just get rid. And then he grabs your head, and his belly is smeared with his swill. So he, then you crawl down the line, and there's the queen, and it's some chief with a mop on his head and a couple of coconut tits. And you got to kiss her foot. And of course, the foot is in another barrel. Splat. And then there's King Neptune, and King Neptune kind of, you got to kiss his hand, and then you have to crawl through this chute, about a 15-foot canvas chute that is filled with more swill and oil and just rancid stuff. And meanwhile, on the outside, these guys are hitting you on the ass through on this chute with the lengths of fire hose. Tradition.
Wow.
You get out at the other end, you
hop.
Yeah, you hop in the water, the boat's sitting still, you hop in this beautiful Pacific tropical water, and they pull you back up and say, welcome aboard Shellback, and now you're a Shellback. And then now there's a couple of guys up in the sail who are on shark watch. So you're putting this big stain of all this swill.
That's right.
And meat sauce and knows what else. And so Sharky gets a whiff, and he blows the whistle, and everybody hops out of the water, and they put a little way on the boat to get away from that big cloud of stuff, and then they continue. So
and then go back in the water.
Yeah. And so I get across. So we pull into Brisbane to go to Brisbane. Brisbane in 1966. Vietnam was not at its high point yet. It was starting its building, and sending American GIs to Australia was starting to pick up, but they loved American GIs in Australia. So we're walking down. We're going to be there for a week. Kind of walking down the street with our little flippity flappity bell bottoms, and cupcake hats, and we're walking down Brisbane, which was a charming old town. And there's these, we walk by a bar, and these old Aussies, come out, grab us, pull us in, and have to buy us drinks. Yanks. We're gonna, and they start talking about, well, it's your dad's, or your dad came over here and fought for us, and blah, 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 and we want to. And so we couldn't buy a drink in that town. And we were like treated royally.
Wow.
They would take us out to dinner. They would take us home. They would introduce us to their daughters and sacrifice their, not really, but, there were 2 weddings on this cruise, one officer and one enlisted guy, 2 Australian women. No,
wow.
so we do a week. We're R&R. We're doing tours, and we're a big deal on this Brisbane River. We're sitting on the Brisbane River, and a ferry boat goes by full of school kids, and this was right around the time of the Yellow Submarine song, and the kids are all singing "We All Live" in a chorus. It was beautiful. So we leave. Okay, now we're headed towards, where were we headed? The Philippines, going to Subic Bay, big Navy base there. And we're kind of like a day out of Brisbane, headed north. And we run aground on Frederick Reef.
Oh, goodness.
The navigation officer, a Annapolis boy, made a mistake, forgot to figure in drift. And so we're going through the barrier reef, and there's some sort of drift that pulled us over. So we're running on the surface, and it's at nighttime. It's at high tide, and I'm sleeping in the forward torpedo room, kind of like, and all of a sudden the collision alarm goes off. Now, we had only been training for like, probably a month, a couple of weeks in Pearl, and then a couple of weeks in transit, headed for Australia. But training. Relentless training, knowing what to do in every emergency. The alarm goes off. Whoop, 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 whoop. Out of a sound sleep, my feet hit the deck. My eyes open up and I lurch towards the first thing, which is secure the escape trunk valve. Okay. But somebody was right there because there's 20 guys sleeping in,
Right.
a van size space. I reach toward the depth log. Somebody's over there. I reach toward the hatch. Somebody's there, and I sit back down. It was like automatic. I was not even conscious. It was like so ingrained already that I knew. Yeah. Wow. And then all of a sudden, we run up on Frederick Reef.
Oh, wow.
Running on the surface. And so the tide was high. The sea was calm. There's 3-4 sets of eyes up on the sail when we're running on the surface. They're constantly scanning the horizon, constantly looking around for anything. And then one lookout goes, he says, "Sir, there looks like there's some wind ripples up ahead, Mm-hmm. And the officer of the deck, he takes his binoculars and he goes, okay, let's look. Okay. Says, looks like wind ripples. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Looks like, look, Nick. Hit the alarm, but we had enough way and we ran about, it says a 300-foot sewer pipe, boat, and we run up on this reef. Boom. Stuck. And we were there for 3 days.
Wow.
My parents are at home watching Walter Cronkite. USS Tyrone runs aground. We were a news. We were worldwide news.
And they're like, what has Ed done now?
Yeah. Was he driving?
Yeah, damn it.
I figured.
So you ran up. Did you run up on high tide or low tide?
It was high tide, yeah. So they couldn't.
High tide.
It's like this a half-mile horseshoe reef, and on high tide it's just under the water. Low tide, you could have seen it, but it was a nighttime. High tide, they didn't see it. We run up on it, and so we're stuck there. And we get out. We're blowing the tanks. We're lightening load. All the engines are running backwards. Nothing's moving. We're stuck. I get to go up on the sail as lookout, and I'm seeing, and some New Zealand Navy and Australian Navy ships come out, but they can't get close to us because of the shallow water.
Right.
So we're put on a call to Brisbane, a tug, the Carlock. I just remember that. Pulled it out of my memory bank. The Carlock, a tug, would get in close to us. So we're waiting there. Meanwhile, a storm kicks up. Now we're living on like a 15-degree angle, Everybody's walking around like this, and I'm up in the sail and I'm looking around and seeing these boats, and helicopters flying over, and news people and stuff and waving and kind of, and the wind is coming from the starboard side, and all of a sudden the wind dies. Okay, that's calm. Okay, it's fine, it's calm. And all of a sudden the wind picks up from the port side. And the waves start picking up at the port side, and the boat starts to roll to the side.
And you're up in the mast.
I'm at the top, and so you're at the top of this arc, right? And it's like an amusement ride that you don't know what the purpose is. And it's rolling over, and I had my you're strapped into the lookout chair, and I had the belt off, I had my binoculars off, and I was ready to hop on the sail and walk. If the boat was going to keep rolling, I was just going to walk to the bottom, but it just hit that we have these fins on the bottom for stabilization when they do they put themselves on the bottom, so purposefully. So it just hitched up on the other fin, and for another day and a half we lived guys were blown overboard. Yeah. We had guys were blown overboard. We had to rescue them. Got injured, had to be helicoptered to Sydney to get fixed. Finally, the Carlock comes up, throws a line, pulls us right off, and we go back to Brisbane. Now there's no leakage. I mean, there's an outer hull and a pressure hull. The pressure hull was still solid, so no leakage there. But the outer hull was all beat to shit, and the torpedo tubes were slightly out of line. So we had to go back to Brisbane go to a dry dock there to inspect before we continued go to the next place, which was a dry dock in Japan to get fixed. So we pull into Brisbane, and there's all these girls waving at us, girlfriends, guys. Hey, welcome back.
Yeah, really.
So
we've only been gone a few minutes, but hey.
So heroes return. So we get out, and we get out, get it checked off. So, okay, we're going to go to Yokosuka, the big base in Japan, Tokyo Bay, to the big shipyard there. We have to get fixed. And so we head north and skirt the Great Barrier Reef. Now, the guy who put us on there, that Annapolis boy, he gets, it was his fault. The captain ultimately, it's his fault too, but no, it's this navigator. He gets transferred when we get to Japan, and he gets transferred to the Pentagon. Yeah.
That's an interesting choice.
Go make decisions there.
Yeah. Well, I guess they figured the building isn't moving, so he can't crash into anything.
You're fine. Good.
He must have been some congressman's son or something.
So we're a month getting fixed in Japan. I remember it was over Christmas. It was like the loneliest Christmas of my life. It was just bleak and cold. And Japan was so alien, such an alien place. I mean, there's nothing visually that you could relate to. Everything was, their kanji and all the smells and all the language. There's nothing. But we're walking down the street in Tokyo, and we're just kind of like, oh, we got to go back to the base or something. And we hear jazz playing, American jazz. We go down this alley. There's a jazz, and we go in this bar, and it's this bar that was playing American jazz and was just packed full of probably mostly students. And we come walking in, and these guys, we were like celebrities, Yankees. And they sat us down and started buying us drinks. And our conversations were basically, Miles Davis, yes, I am. Eddie Harris, just naming jazz. And as the music's playing, and and so we were kind of jazz real big, probably still is in Japan. And so we get out of there, we get back. We continue this cruise. Now, the cruise consisted of one time our longest underwater thing we did. Now, we could go underwater and stay underwater if we stuck a mast, snorkel to breathe, to recharge the batteries. You can put a snorkel up and you can run the diesels and charges the battery, because these are electric motors that drive the boat, and also charge the air banks so you can breathe. So our job was to sneak in. We had spent about 50 days underwater, snorkeling in the daytime. At night, we'd sneak into Shanghai Harbor. This was back when China didn't own us, and they were, they weren't our friends. We'd sneak into Shanghai Harbor, get close to their shipping lanes and their docks and whatever, stick up some masts and plot the place of their radar and plot their radio stations and take pictures. In the daytime, we'd sneak out into deep water, 12 miles out, and then we'd stick up the snorkel and recharge. And now the Chinese, the 12-mile limit is kind of the national acceptance, but the Chinese went, no, 20 miles, 50 miles. So they knew we were out there. So we'd play cat and mouse. Masts up, and they're all looking around. We know that somebody's coming, these little patrol boats, and so we go underwater and hide. And then patrol boats knew we were out there, and you can hear their, just like on the television, just like in the movies, little ping.
Oh, really? You can actually hear that.
Yeah.
I always figured that was just a special effect they did.
Oh, you hear it. Ping. Oh. So they're pinging us, and every once in a while they throw a hand grenade over the side, because just to say, we know you're down there, round eye.
Right.
A hand grenade wouldn't do anything to the boat, unless it
but it's
landed
just
right
to let you know.
Yeah,
it's cheaper than a
so we're playing with that. And after some of the myths about submarine service, the best food in the Navy, right? Well, yeah, for a while. After 2 weeks, all the fresh food's gone. After a month, anything that's kind of really good is gone. you're getting into the second month, and everything's powdered eggs, powdered milk, powdered spinach, powdered water.
Spinach? What the hell is
Powdered-
powdered?
I just add water and shake it. Yeah.
This just sounds like a smoothie, a bad old smoothie. I
So-
remember in the movie Das Boot when
Yeah.
they first go out
Yeah.
and they're like, everybody's okay, and there's all these like oranges and all this food that's
Exactly.
hanging on the inside of it, just stuck to the walls wherever they could pack something that was going to be fresh.
We would walk on cases, number 10 can cases of beans and stuff like that, be it in the passageway. So you'd walk on them. Yeah. So yeah, everything is so. Food was horrible, and you turned into a zombie. And it's like you were kind of everybody was walking around after 40 days, and they're kind of like, you do your job, okay, you stand your watch, and you eat something just because you had to eat something, and then you'd sleep, and then you get up and you do your job. I mean, people were like zombies.
Wow.
Finish that, go back to Japan, get drunk, have fights. It was an adventure. It was like a Hollywood adventure. It was because the crew, you really get close, of course. But with the officers also, there was less division between the aristocracy and the proletariat, because the officers and the crew were together. And so you hit the beach and you'd be buying each other drinks and you'd be backing each other up in a bar fight. And I qualified, got my dolphins, and they'd throw you overboard into the water, and then they take you out to get to another tradition is once you earn your dolphins, they take you to a bar and they get the biggest brandy sniffer, and they'd pour a shot of everything into that brandy sniffer. A shot of this, a shot of that, some of this, like this. And then, so it was like, got a couple, 3 inches of mixed liqueurs. And they take your dolphins, drop the dolphins in the bottom. And then you had to take it and chug this giant glass and then catch the dolphins in your teeth. And then they go, yeah, ooga, ooga. And then they do the chant. They go, submariners once, submariners twice. Holy fucking Jesus Christ. We go up, we go down. We don't even fuck around. Submariners. So stuff like that. We went to the Tonkin Gulf a bunch of times, and we're like on picket duty, which is just hanging out. If a flyer gets shot down and has to ditch at sea, you go pick them up. And so we were there for a bunch of times. Tonkin Gulf, it was like no threat. The Navy didn't have any threats. The only threats the Navy had in Vietnam were, the guys at sea. There were guys on the land too. They had the threats. The guys at sea, it was bad weather, bad machinery, and each other. Those are the dangers.
Oh, now I had a question. So you were saying, like, when you were in high school, you were, kind of being goofball, classic clowny stuff.
Yeah.
Were you still any of that in the Navy?
Oh,
or were
yeah.
you like, oh yeah?
Oh no. I was still there. I would get myself in trouble. Yeah. I'd say something, and the chief would have me by the ear, and down on the bilge or something, or a restricted duty or stuff like that. So I was,
Still being a smart ass.
Yeah, smart ass. I was appreciated, by certain people, and abhorred by others. So we're finishing up this cruise, and it's like it had been established as a 6-month cruise. Then it got extended to 7 months. Then it got extended to 8 months, and it was getting close to 9 months where we've been out. And it's like, and we had fire at sea with an engine ran away and blew up, and we had to fix it out at sea. We were in a typhoon off of Korea where we had to ride the typhoon out on the surface, because if the typhoon lasts for more than 3 days, we'd have to if we were underwater, and we went on surfacing. A boat's balance is very precarious in the transition from underwater to surface, and a big wave could roll you over.
Yeah.
So we had to ride this typhoon out on the surface. And I remember being up in the sail, doing my lookout watch, waves breaking over, the top of the sail, which is like 60, 70 feet off the surface. And we're strapped in, and we're just, and can't see into howling. And I look over, and there is a fishing boat, a probably Korean, most maybe Japanese, a fishing boat, little, 40-foot, wooden boat. And there's a guy on the back deck, and he's chopping something up, chopping fish up. He's kind of squatted down, and his boat's going. So we get through that, so we had fights, storms at sea, run aground, fire at sea, but also beautiful moments on the ocean, moonbows, rainbow made out of moonlight, and whales, and just the wildlife in the water. So finally, okay, we're done, and we're headed back. We're leaving Japan, and we're headed back to Pearl, and we're running on the surface. 3 engines. I got 3 engines. They were just roaring, and everybody's, oh boy, going home. Everybody's hot up for the going home, and I'm up on deck sunning myself before I go down to my engine room watch, and I'm sitting there, and beautiful clouds and waves, and just a beautiful day, and everybody's kind of breathing. Oh man, that was wow, what an adventure. And this guy named Arden, who was a sonar tech, and he was very interesting character, and he comes up on deck, and he whips out a harmonica, and he starts playing his harmonica, just riffing on his harmonica, and I could feel something in my legs, the bones of my legs, like a vibration. Okay, and the vibration got bigger, and it got bigger, and it starts running up my legs, goes through my hips, starts running up the back of my spine, and it goes out through the top of my head in a burst of pure joy. I had this called peak experience. I found out later Abraham Maslow was the name of the book. Abraham Maslow, he lists these things of consciousness, and one of them is called the peak experience, where if you achieve, it's after you achieve a dream or a goal, you have this moment of perfection. All right. And my childhood dream of being a sailor, having an adventure at sea, was achieved, and I got triggered by this harmonica, and it blew, and I was breathing hard, and I thought I was going nuts. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, what the hell's going on? And then the officer of the deck goes, hey, you better lay below. It's getting a little bit rough. So I go back down inside this smelly, noisy tube, and I'm still vibrating inside, but I can't talk to anybody. I don't know. I go stand my watch in the engine room, and I'm still just vibrating. It took me about an hour to slowly get back in there. I went, what the hell was that? And it wasn't until I went to Laney Junior College and took some psych courses that I found out peak experience, moment of perfection. Now, the thing is, once that's done, you got to go get another one.
Yeah, right. Now you're hooked.
So we finish that, go back to Pearl. I finally get orders to my nuclear submarine, my future, my golden.
Yeah, right. Now you've been in at this point for like 2.5 years?
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah. And so I finally get ordered. My Homer Simpson future is awaiting me. Pascagoula, Mississippi, new construction, USS Aspro, SSN 648, a brand new fast attack submarine being built at the Lytton shipyard down in Pascagoula on the Gulf Coast. I get down there, I find out I'm going to be there for probably about a year on land in new construction, testing machinery, working with these yard workers. And this is where I get my first big dose of institutionalized racism in Mississippi. I was aware, of race, but I work with, black guys, sailors, and Filipinos, all kind, no big thing. But Mississippi, the shipyard, the black guys, they did that work, and the white guys did that work, and the black guys lived in that part of town, it just totally, okay, and I could feel it, and we were Yankees, so we're down in a small town, like about 18,000 people. And the people were charming. Y'all come back, you hear, and but there was this tone down there about Yankees, because at that time, what they had with the Freedom Summer,
civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement was cooking. They had sent a bunch of people down. Yankees came down there to work with black voter registration. Cheney, Schwerner, and what's his name get murdered. So I'm seeing it's really kind of, I can feel a different tension there about Yankees, and you're interfering with the way we live,
Huh.
This black guy on the pier, me and this other guy were throwing a football around on the pier, and he goes, "You guys play ball?" I says, "Yeah, we play ball." He says, "Want to come out for the team?" I says, "What do you mean? What team?" He says, "We got a semi-professional football team down here called the Pass Point Steelers. Two towns, Pascagoula and Moss Point, next to each other. Moss Point was the black town." He says, "We got a team down here. You get paid $10 a game, and we do a little short season, but we're needing some people. You want to come on?" So our schedule was enough that we could go practice with this team, and there were a bunch of guys cut from college, a couple of guys who had tried out for the pros, a bunch of high school jocks, and
What position did you play?
The bench. I played everything. I played it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Go bench.
I mean, I was at center once. They threw me in at center. I'm pretty sure it was because I was a Yankee and putting me in the worst spot to get mauled.
Yeah.
But I played like a defensive end or something, and I had some playing time. And we traveled around the South. We did Biloxi. We did a bunch of, probably about 6 towns along the Gulf Coast. And one of the times, I bought this VW convertible. So I had money. So I'm getting paid extra money. I'm getting paid sub money. I'm getting paid proficiency pay for being a nuclear power. They wanted to keep you. Right. And the hook on getting paid proficiency pay was you had to extend one more year.
God. You're up to 7 years.
But this is where I got married, see? So I'm making top dollar. I'm making top dollar. My hometown sweetheart, we had been sending letters back, for years. Every time I came, I had leave. I'd come home to her. So we decided to get married. I go to Cleveland. We get married. For our honeymoon, we went to a New York Giants Cleveland Browns football game.
Woo! Did the Browns win?
I can't remember. Probably, yeah. No, it could have, because back then, Jim Brown was gone by that time. But so I grew up with the Browns. So we get married. I'm going to have a kid. Now, this is my life, Frida. I'm going to do my nuclear job in the Navy. I'm going to get out probably, and I'm going to have a nuclear job in Northern Ohio, because they had a plant there, and my nespotic family would get me right in. So it was all set. I mean, that's what I was going to do. And it kind of got, but I'm digging rock and roll. And there's not much down there in the South. And I'm subscribing to Rolling Stone magazine and reading about rock and roll and reading about.
That's early.
Yeah. The counterculture. I'm reading about what's going on in San Francisco, this countercultural thing. This is, 68. And then the Chicago convention happens, Democratic convention. And I'm watching it on television. I go to the shipyard the next day, and all the rednecks in uniform and the civilian yard workers are going, "Yep, beat them fucking hippies up, didn't we? Them commie hippies." Now, they saw that, and I saw a police riot. So I started questioning my politics, which I didn't have really. But this kind of brought up, what side are you on? What are you fighting for? So there's racism, institutionalized racism going on. I see the culture clash going on. So I'm starting to get kind of an attitude. Now, because I had been a year on this old diesel boat, my attitude was a little different too. I was not taking shit like anybody else was. Like I talked back more. I was getting in trouble for talking back to my superior officers. Because, what are you saying that for? Come on, I'm doing the job, So I was getting in trouble. So I had a little bit of a reputation, so much so that, so we had this barracks barge tied up next to the pier where the boat is. And you go to work and you come in, and so the boat's still being worked on. And if you got the duty, you got to stay overnight or stay over the weekend. You sleep on the barracks barge. Now I'm sleeping on the barracks barge, and every morning at 7:30, everybody lines up on the pier for quarters, where the captain or whoever addresses you about what's happening today and gives out information. So somebody comes down and starts shaking me. He says, Holmes, get up. Recorders are up there and they're waiting for you. I had overslept. And the captain was going to give me my 4-year good conduct medal. You get after 4 years. After 4 years, if you got a clean slate, they give you a little purple ribbon.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So here I come down the brow off the boat onto the pier. Everybody's standing waiting for me. I get up there, and the captain kind of goes, "Here, pins it on me."
Yeah, right.
How
Last
ironic.
one of these you're gonna get.
Yeah. So we put this boat in operation. We take it out on sea trials off of Key West. We do all the things that you need to do to make sure the thing is safe as it can be. And then we get commissioned in the Navy, and now we get sent to Pearl Harbor for our home port. We go through the Panama Canal, swing up to Pearl Harbor, pull into Pearl Harbor, and we're the latest, tool in the fleet, the latest weapon in the fleet. Really? We're a big deal. Bands are waiting.
Long wait too.
Yes, just flags flying and bands, and we're taken out to dinner. Some guys get transferred off, and some new guys get transferred on. One of the new guys gets transferred on is this young kid. And he starts hanging around. Now, on board the boat, there's two cultures. There's two cultures, enlisted and officer. But there's two cultures in the enlisted guys. It's country and Western music and rock and roll. Not the culture. And there's a record player in the crew's mess, and whoever got to the record player first could play their music because you're playing. Right. Well, you played your record and everybody's listening to it. There's no earphones. So I was playing rock and roll. So these other guys playing, country and Western, and we were, we tolerate each other. But this young new kid gets on board and starts hanging out with us rock and rollers. And after a few days, he says, "Hey, you guys want to go to a party in Waikiki?" He says, "Yeah, sure we do." Yeah. So we go to this party, and at the party, somebody offers us marijuana.
Oh, devil weed.
Now, I've been reading all about this. I was up on it. I read Rolling Stone. And I went, and a bunch of us went, yeah, we'll try it. So we tried it. Next day, we're all busted. The kid was from ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, sent there. Narc. He narked us. And so we're yanked off the boat. We're now security hazards. We had top secret clearance for nuclear power, but now we're a security hazard. Right. We're off the boat. We're in the barracks and waiting our fate, which could have been really bad. Bad conduct discharge.
Was it 20 years at that point or something?
No, you wouldn't get, chances are you wouldn't get prison time because so many guys were doing it, but you could get bad conduct discharge, BCD, which is like branding on your forehead, loser. And that follows you around forever, and you lose all your benefits, any benefits that after you get out. But so many guys were doing it at the time, and they had so much invested in us, so to speak, in training, they decided to send me and a couple other guys to finish off our enlistment on a surface boat. We couldn't get back to submarines. Most of the diesel boats had gone. And so arduous sea duty. And there's like aircraft carriers, oilers, ammunition ships, and destroyers are called arduous sea duty because they spend more than, I forget what it is, like 250 days a year at sea. So I get sent eventually to the USS Hancock based in Alameda. Hancock's an old World War II aircraft carrier, 3,000 guys. I'm down in the engine room working on an oil-fired steam plant. And they flew me. It was already in the Tonkin Gulf. So I had to fly to Pearl, to Guam, to Tan Son Nhut in Vietnam. And then they fly me. I got to land on an aircraft carrier and then down in the engine room. And so I'm down in the engine room and I'm working down there and prove myself, a capable watchstander. I could, I knew machinery. I could do things and make things not happen. So, and we run around there. We come back. I'm back here at home in Alameda now. I brought my wife and kid. Had a kid at the time, and we're living in Oakland. And we're getting ready. In 3 months after we got back, we're going to go out again for another cruise, another Westpac cruise. So we're getting ready. And this is the drug story, another drug story. Okay.
It's always another drug.
So, well, there's a couple of them actually.
Yeah,
So,
really. You just can't remember most of them. That's the problem with drug story.
We're moored in Alameda, and I got the weekend duty, and so you're on duty. You got to stay on the ship. Aircraft carrier is a ship, a submarine is a boat, and you got on the ship, and you have to be ready for anything. You're just there, and so nothing's happening. The engine room's cold, the boilers are cold, nothing's happening. So we're just hanging, and a buddy goes, "Hey, let's drop some acid." Sure. Well, what the fuck? Got nothing to do. We'll drop some acid. We'll go up on deck and watch the sun go down on San Francisco Bay. Fine, cool. So we drop some acid. And all of a sudden, hey, get ready. Get ready to take on steam into the engine room. We're leaving early. Yeah.
There's an engine room?
I ain't fucking kidding you. It was, and taking on steam. So boilers are heating the water up, and as soon as it gets up to this like 600-pound steam, and it comes through the bulkhead, and then you have to direct the steam to warm all the pumps up and warm up the main engine. It's like brain fucking surgery. Twisting the valves at the right time, at the right temperature, in the right order. And the two of us are down there going, and we're doing it. And I remember I left one of the big giant steam pumps. There's a valve in the bottom for draining, and left the drain open. So steam is filling up this whole corner of the engine room. And I remember walking into this cloud of steam, blind, and reaching down and finding that valve. It's like my hands knew exactly where to go to close that valve and secure the steam up. And then we're fucking, and then the relief comes down and goes, how'd it go? Everything, yeah, it's fine. Another drug story. We take this thing out the ocean. We take it out on another cruise. Japan and Hong Kong. Hong Kong's my favorite fucking ports. Oh, Hong Kong is amazing. And our last after like a 6 or 7 month Westpac cruise, Hancock, it goes to Sydney, Australia, and we're headed back across. Oh no, I forgot the whole thing. Oh shit, man. It's set up. So. Before we leave on this cruise, I go down with my wife to Los Angeles to visit friends. She has relatives down there. And I go to a party, and it was like a Friday or a Thursday, Friday. So we're down on Thursday and on Friday, and then I'd have to fly back up to Alameda on Friday because I had the weekend watch. Mm-hmm. And so I go to this party, and we're having a great time, and then I go to the airport, and there's a bomb scare. So they're frisking everybody. Oh. And in my shirt pocket, a joint.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Of course.
Holy shit. Yank me out of line. Cops get me. Call the Navy. Navy sends a shore patrol, pick me up, take me to Long Beach, throw me in the brig, and now I'm AWOL. Because it's Saturday morning, and I'm supposed to be back on the ship. So now I'm AWOL. So I'm stuck here, and they're going to hold me until Monday, and then I get to fly back and answer whatever, But one of the people who we were visiting in L.A. was a parole officer for the L.A. County. Huh. He makes a couple of calls, and the civilians throw away the charge. So. Wow. And so that's clear, but the Navy's got me. And so I get out and I come back to Alameda, report aboard on Monday morning. Hey, where are you, Holmes? What happened? I got in a little bit of trouble. So they didn't, okay, they didn't say anything.
So the AWOL didn't
no,
jump
yeah.
for that.
I think I got a little extra duty or something like that. Yeah. We go to the cruise, 6 months, go to Brisbane, last port coming across the ocean, the Pentagon. It's probably that same fucking officer off the Tyroo. The Pentagon says, well, this sailor, Holmes, got busted at the airport for marijuana. What have you done to reprimand him? Huh. So I'm short. I've got like 3 months left in my enlistment. And now here's my second fucking drug bust.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Now, on board, I had been a good watchstander in the engine room. I was taking college courses, preparatory courses, because I knew I was going to try to go to college. And I'm taking college courses, and the proctor is the chaplain, and I'm taking through San Diego State. And so I'm taking courses with him, and he's getting. I'm in the radio station. I volunteer to be a radio jazz disc jockey on the ship's radio station. So I'm kind of like doing, and so I had to go do a captain's mast. All right, and this is where the captain's mast is at a trial. You stand there, and the captain, goes, "Oh, okay, so you've got busted for," and this is the second, okay, second time. Now behind me is the chaplain, an officer, the officer in charge of the radio station. Okay, my chief, who was this po-bucker redneck, bald-headed motherfucker from Alabama, standing behind me. He always called me Holmes, you're a goddamn hippie. Holmes, you're a hippie. He's standing behind me. I had this kind of choir to sing my praises to the captain. He does his job. He's improving himself. He donates his time for the ship, and the captain kind of goes, I got to do something to you. So they fined me for a month's pay. And then that was it. Skin of my fucking teeth. I could have got BCD'd again.
And how many months? You only have, 3 months left?
3 months left. So we get back and back to Alameda, and I get out. Thank you very much, Navy. Now I'm here. My dad goes, okay, you're out. Well, when you coming back to Cleveland?
All right.
He says, get you a job. And get you a job at the power plant. I didn't tell him about all these, drug busts and loss of my nuclear power. Well, Dad, I'm going to hang out here in California for a little while. Me and Barb and Jenny were living in Oakland near Lake Merritt, a nice little place, and had the GI Bill, and which was really good at that time. I don't know, it went bad and it might have gotten better, but back then it was really good. And they pay you money to go to college, and Laney was right across the lake, and Laney was easy to get to because I didn't have any grades, never did the SATs, but Laney would take anybody, particularly veterans. So I go to Laney for 2 years. And I'm taking.
And what were you taking at Laney? Just general?
General, because I'm looking for something new to do, because I'm not going to do that engineering thing anymore. I'm not going to be a machinist, mate. I'm not going to be a steam mechanic.
You're not going to stand next to something really hot.
None of that.
Yeah.
So I'm fishing around. I'm taking sociology courses and psychology and pottery and photography. I was kind of like photography when I was overseas. First time you get over to Japan, everybody buys either a camera or a stereo system. And I bought a camera, really good 35 millimeter, good 2 1/4 system, and I was taking pictures. So I had latent photographic tendencies. So I said, well, Laney had photographer course. You could become, an assistant to a real photographer. I said, so I started taking the photography courses, but they were commercial photography courses, taking pictures of bread, making bread look good on a table. And I'm kind of like, I had some sort of latent artistic, tendencies, I guess. And so I'm taking more art classes. And my last semester, so well, where are you going next? I'm going to get an AA in general studies from Laney. Let's see, where I'm going to go next. I'm either going to go to UC Berkeley. I applied there for sociology, or I'm going to go to SF State. Applied there for the arts program, photography, ceramics, anything. Ceramics, I like the ceramics a lot. So I was accepted at both of them at the beginning of the year. So okay, good. All right. And I got the GI Bill. My wife was working part-time, and it was enough back there in the early 70s. You could live. You could survive in the Bay Area.
It's hard to believe how much it's changed. People in those days could buy a house on unemployment. You could make rent and make a mortgage.
Yeah, so different world. So I'm going, okay, well, that's what it was. Well, I got to stick around for one more semester here at Laney. I got a couple of requirements, class requirements I have to take, a language thing, I think, to qualify for these two schools, and one of these I'm going to pick. And so I had a class on a Tuesday and a Thursday in the morning, and like early in the morning, okay, because it was one of those classes nobody wanted to take, but you had to take. And then a class late in the afternoon and nothing in between. So I'm going, well, instead of coming home, I'll stick around and I'll take something. I'm leafing through the catalog, Laney catalog, looking for something to take to fill in this Tuesday, Thursday, middle of the day, looking for something to take. And I'd never in my life considered theater. Was not on my radar whatsoever. Theater.
Had you seen any shows? Or?
Not much. No, not much at all. No, was not really drawn to it. Comedy, yeah, comedy. I was up for the comedians. But there is a course there taught mime and movement. And I heard about this mime thing. Fine. When I was growing up on the couch with my dad back in Cleveland, we would watch Red Skelton, Sid Caesar, Jack Benny, the golden age of comedy television. My dad and so I had a taste for that because my dad loved that and I loved that. So I went mime and movie. Yeah, okay. Well, it fits right in here. What the hell? It's probably a cushy course,
Easy.
I'll just take it. Yeah. Gordon Keller was the teacher. He had been a Navy guy back in the 50s, had gone to Paris, studied with Jacques Lecoq, came back and caught the mime wave that was breaking on the shores of California at the time. And he had a thing called the Berkeley Mime Troupe, which he had extracted the best people from his class, and they were performing outside. White face, white tights, comedy and art, no politics at all.
Yeah.
Slight, maybe sociological on some of them. And they were doing shows. And Gordon, I'm taking a class, and Gordon Keller, he goes, so Gordon's the mentor you're supposed to bump into once in a while. The guy
right.
does your adjustment. And he goes, where'd you study before? I says, nowhere. I said, oh, well, you got a natural talent. What are you doing next? Well, so either UC Berkeley or SF State. He goes, nah, you don't want to go there. You don't want to do that. You want to go study theater at Cal State Hayward, which is where he studied theater. And I said, let me introduce you. Go out there, introduce to Jim Costi and God, I mean, the guy. And he says, if you studied theater at UC Berkeley, you gotta kiss ass for 2 years before you get on stage. SF State, it's okay too, but it's across the bay, and go to Cal State Hayward. You'll get a lot of experience on stage, in the tech, everywhere. So 3 years, Cal State Hayward. I got a bachelor's in theater arts there. And while I was there, I was taking modern dance because I'm a physical comedian. And so I was a couple of guys in the class going, I take this modern dance class. It's good for you. So I was taking the modern dance class. Dr. Gay Cheney, a woman who was teaching, she comes to me and says, how would you like a scholarship to Mills College? Mills College? He said, yeah, they got to have a couple of men in the department at the grad level for the women to do their lifts, and also choreograph for a male body. And I can get you a scholarship. So, fuck yeah. I says, this is it. I get a master's. I got a bachelor's in theater, a master's in dance. That's my ticket to be a college professor.
All right.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. And so me and the other guy, Ken Beltroni, we were the two guys in the dance department at Mills for 2 years. And I took a lot of extra courses at the CCM, Center for Contemporary Music, doing experimental music, John Cagey stuff, Robert Ashley, David Behrman, Terry Riley, that kind of stuff. And I was collaborating with those people, doing weird music. I'm doing the dance thing. I'm living just up the hill from Mills. And so I get the end of Mills, you got to put on a performance. You got to take an oral test, and you have to take a written test. So I take the written test, I take the oral, and I can talk my way out of anything, talk my way things. So I could steer the question to what I knew, and then I had to do a performance. And instead of doing just 20 minutes on the girls' grad night level, everybody has 20 minutes. Three of us, Ken Beltroni and then his girlfriend Lisa, we decided we wanted our own night. So we got our own night in the theater, and we put together our show. Three of us shared the show, and I did a thing called the cartoon opera. And I had mime, and I had dance, and I had cartoon. We blew the roof off of the place.
Wow.
And but then comes the graduation time. Eleanor Lauer, she had worked with Martha Graham. She was the head of the department. Calls me up and says, "Ed, I got some bad news for you." She said, "We're going to have to ask you to take the test again, the written test. You didn't get enough points. Didn't get enough points on your written test." And I'm on the phone. "What do you mean, points?" I says, "Well, yeah, you got to you got to have 75 or above, and you had 73, or some stupid thing like that. And so we're asking you to come back again, and come back again and take the test." A little pause. And I went, "Okay." And I hung up the phone, and then I picked up the phone and I threw it against the wall, and I ran down the street. She lived right down the street from me, Eleanor.
Oh.
10 o'clock at night, I'm knocking on the door. I got to talk to you, Eleanor. I got to talk to you. Poor sweet lady, little gray-haired, and she's sitting behind her little table in the kitchen, and I'm pacing back and forth, talking, developing my theory of education.
Right. Yeah. Let me tell you what you should be doing.
Yeah. So, well, I'm looking. I've worked with these guys across the street, Senator. I've collaborated with those guys. I'm teaching on the outside part-time. I'm doing kid shows. I was doing young audiences, doing the history of clowns and mimes for elementary schools all over the Bay Area. I'm doing that. I had I says, that's got to count for something, And so I talked her into another oral. So the next day, I get to go into the oral. And the next day was supposed to be a day off for all the teachers, because it's called Grades Day. But she calls, and so I walk into the room, and they're all just glumly looking at me. Okay,
why do we have to be here for Holmes?
Yeah. And so again, the test on the written test, the questions like describe the evolution of choreography from 1700 to 1850 with names and dates and choreographers and dancers and I was kind of but I knew some. So they asked me questions like that again, and I could steer it. And there was a guy in Italy in 1700s named Salvador Viggiano who choreographed differently to music. He was kind of like, he took the sounds of music and turned them into specific motions, almost like eurythmia or something. And so I knew about him. And so I steered the conversation that way. And I showed them that I knew something about dance fucking history, and I passed me. So I had to talk my way. Out of Mills, and they were kind of like happy to see me go, I'm sure.
It seems like I wonder with Mills, because at that time there weren't, like you said, there weren't many men going to Mills and getting their masters at Mills.
Yeah.
Is there are you on the wall at Mills? Is it like the Ed Holmes hallway or something?
It's probably a garbage bucket or something. I mean, there's a bunch of guys over at the CCM, Center for Contemporary Music, that I collaborate. There's a few in the art department, but yeah, we were a small crowd. And a number of years ago, 20 years ago, Mills was going to go unco-ed. They're going to go co-ed. And they had a demonstration on campus where, all the women were going, "No men at Mills." And me and this one guy, Christian Schiess, who was in the art department, he calls me up and says, "We should go to the demonstration and have a sign, Mills men against men."
Yeah.
Well, we didn't do it. Oh, but it's he and I. Oh, so our graduation at Mills. So we're out in the big lawn, and it's just picturesque place, eucalyptus and charming architecture and just a beautiful thing. And there's all the girls sitting there on the stage, and they're calling the names out and handing the diploma as you're walking in. And we're at the back end. Me and Christian Schiess drop acid. And we're having fun in the back. And I told the photographer at the beginning, he's taking pictures of everybody. It comes up there, clicking. I says, be ready for a second picture with me. Okay, I got a little something. Yeah. So underneath my robe, I had kind of a clown outfit, bright stripes and blues and things and like it. And so I walk up. Oh, and then I had a clown nose palmed in my hand. And so, the president, her name is White. I can't remember the first name. White. She's up there, and she's got this. So she's been up there for 2.5 hours, going, shaking hands, congratulations, and shaking hands and congratulations. And she sees me, and okay. And I grab her hand, and she feels something in her hand, and I could feel her go flex, like that. And I pull my hand away, like she had given me a clown nose. Put the clown nose on, opened my robe, went to one knee and went, ta-da, and then popped up again and walked off the stage. And at the big reception afterwards, some, Mills is mostly, it's a lot of rich girls from the East Coast. The parents send them there to get away from old boyfriends, and some very rich folks. And this very nice, well-dressed, well-manicured, coiffured dad, he comes up, and I'm at the table getting some strawberries, and he goes, "It's very tasteful what you did. I appreciate that. Thank you." He said, "Sure, thank you." So now I got my master's. I got a bachelor's. I've been teaching here and there part-time. I taught at I taught at Laney part-time. I taught at the SF Museum. Went back to State Hayward, taught there. So I had a resume that was perfect for, go out there and get myself a job in a theater department somewhere.
Yeah.
Prop 13. Prop 13 happens. Knocks the pins out of the college, the whole education system in California. All those jobs had dried up. So I'm still doing part-time stuff. This is 78, I graduated. But then Andrew Letchworth, who was in the drama department with me at Cal State Hayward, and Paul Harkness, he calls me up. And Drew says, "We're going to start a Commedia dell'arte troupe. Want to join?" And I says, "Yeah, well, what should I do?" He says, you be Arlecchino. I said, "Okay." So we put together a 5-person troupe called Familia Bologna, and we put together a show, for the show 78, a half-hour slapstick commedia that we did at the Ren Fair in Novato, and we became really popular for the next 2-3 years. Went through a transition where all the women left because it's so testosterone-y, and we wound up with just 7 guys. We called ourselves Fratelli Bologna. And so we were playing that. We took that out into Theater Artaud, the Julian Theater. We took it to Hawaii. We were the headliners at the Hawaii Ren Fair. And then got the job on the right stuff. So I'm getting commercials. So I'm making a living. A little bit of theater. I'm doing some commercials. Doing some print work. I had an agent. And I'm kind of like just, struggling along, and you could still do that. So this is early 80s. Yeah. And I go through a divorce, amicable divorce. My kid's 13, and she's doing okay. And my parents move out. They move back to Cleveland. Suddenly, I have all my domestic responsibilities are all gone. My parents are taking care of themselves. My ex-wife's taking care of herself. The daughter's okay. So I got no ties, and I'm broke, basically. Oh, so I started working with Antenna Theater also, and out of Chris Hardman, doing his experimental stuff. And I have friends in L.A., moved to L.A., say, "Come on down. We know you need work. Work's down here. You can sleep on our couch, establish yourself." And I said, "That's a good idea. This is summer." And I'm going, "Okay, finish the Ren Fair." And I go, "I'm going to, end of the year, I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to make the move. That's the right thing to do." Sigrid Werschmidt, remember her?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, sweet Sigrid. So we were in a movie together, Alice's Adventures Underground, little black and white 16, shot by Kevin Kline's sister, Kate Kline May, and a really sweet film. And I was in it. She was the queen. And she's doing the Mime Troupe. She's doing Hotel Universe.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
And she says, "Well, hey, come on over and see this." Oh, so yeah. So I go to Washington Square Park. I see her, and and I was a fan of the Mime Troupe. Never knew how it worked. Mechanizations about getting in but I was a fan of what they did. And she says they're looking for a guy, be a CIA agent for the next show. And they're having trouble finding it. You should try. So I throw my resume and headshot through the door. Dan Chumley calls me in. And after like 2 weeks, I wasn't a singer. After 2 weeks, it was either me or Harry Rothman.
Oh yeah.
Remember Harry? So Harry had great voice. He could sing. I couldn't.
Yeah.
But so Dan kept. I would bring me in one day and try me on a scene, and then the next day he'd bring Harry in and try him, and then the next day me. He couldn't decide. He finally decided on me. Thank goodness. Thank you, Dan.
Saved you from going to Los Angeles.
I didn't go to Los Angeles. Yeah, and and then they said I'd come back off the tour, 10-week tour. Where did we go? I think we went to the East Coast, Midwest, and I proved myself, as a trooper, and they asked me to join, and that was it. And I went, I'm here, and the rest is history. Goodbye.
That was a good story. Good. And it's an hour and a half. But so, and I am going to try to get, after I kind of put these together, I want to get back to people to talk to them more about like Mime Troupe years and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was a lot. And I think that was the first time I saw you was at the Ren Fair.
Oh, yeah.
Because Valena and I and another friend were singing at the Ren Fair.
Uh-huh.
And we were in a small theater company, and so we were just kind of checking out the companies, and we saw Familia Bologna and Fratelli Bologna.
Yeah.
And I remember, so when I saw you at the Mime Troupe, I was like, it's that guy! I was like, I get to work with him. But anyway, so I guess we should wrap it up for today. But thanks so much. It was so interesting. And I've worked with you all these years and know you, and I still learn more stuff, which is always cool.
Cool, buddy.
And so, that's it for this time of the MimeCast, and I'll be putting this up as soon as I can, and I will let you know when I do.
Bye-bye.
All right. Talk to you later.
See ya.
Bye-bye.